Hello, everyone. So I was reminded that, and I hope y'all remember too, that my youngest, he had given me 3 questions and I only answered one. So we have a little less than 2 more weeks remaining till May 20th. So I answered the first question about why am I running. The second question was about how am I hoping to impact the ESD by serving as a board of directors. So how do I, like what impact am I hoping to have essentially both for the ESD and for the families and children and everyone else connected to the ESD. So just as a reminder, I am running for the position of Board of Directors with the Lynn Benton Lincoln Educational Service District. So that is a mouthful, and that's shortened to LBLESD. It is important to understand what the ESD does when I think about impact, as well as the role of board members. So the ESD provides a variety of services for school districts that fall within Lynn, Benton, and Lincoln counties. A big service that they provide is around early intervention. So this is for children birth through age 5 who are at risk of developing a disability or who already have a disability, right? And so that's early intervention and early childhood special education. And this is provided through the ESD. Once children reach school age, the ESD continues to provide special education services. And some of this also depends on the school district. So they provide things like evaluation services. So if you have a child who's been evaluated for example, autism, an essential member of the team is the psychologist. And within our area, typically the psychologist would be provided by the ESD, right? The ESD also have other specialists, so like hearing specialists, for example. They also have speech language therapists. They also have specialists who might be speech language therapists, but whose skill is around Alcom devices. So coming up with different strategies for children to be able to communicate outside of verbal or even sign language. So things like using pictures to communicate or using a computer to communicate as well. So again, wide degree of services. They also provide educational services to students who might be housed at the farm home here in our area. So this is students whose mental health challenges, in order to be supported, receive services outside of their school, their neighborhood school setting. So they might be in a residential school, and in our area, we have the farm home. The ESD doesn't provide the mental health services. What they provide is the educational component, ensuring that those children, even though they're not in their neighborhood schools, that they continue to receive their education, so they continue to have the possibility of graduating, which is very important. And then there's some other services that ESD offers that people might not be aware of. So things like managing information systems, for example. This is a huge role that the ESD also plays. So I just wanted to give you some examples there. So again, important to understand what the ESD does, and important to understand what does a board member do. So a board member is a representative of the community, and they work with other representatives of the community in order to ensure that one, different perspectives of the community is being presented, and to ensure kind of like the overall well-being of our different communities. So for the ESD, you'd recognize that that's a huge area because it encompasses these three different areas. And I think that it presents a wonderful model of how to really work well with others in order to ensure like the well-being of this area, right? Last year, I received an award from the NAACP, and on the award that I was given, I often reflect on the words that were written on it, and essentially what it says is that if you want to go fast, go alone, right? And I'm going to paraphrase because I can't remember the exact wording, but if you want to go long and if you want it to be sustainable, then you need to go with others. And I think the ESD presents a model of that, where you're working with others. So this is not the case of a single superhero like trying to kind of answer questions for everyone, right? This is teaming. This is really about teaming. So I bring those skills to this board if elected for the position. I enjoy being in spaces where I'm working along with others because I recognize that therein lies our strength when we are working with others, especially with people who might have different perspectives than we do. So that openness to collaboration, this is something that I bring with me. Another function of boards is to serve as like a governing unit. So ensuring, for example, that the ESD that they're following policies that might be outlined by places such as the Oregon Department of Education, and also developing policies to ensure that the services that we are providing, that it is based on best practice, and that it's really meeting the needs of our community. So there are more aspects to being a board member, but I just wanted to highlight some. So going back to the question now, what am I hoping to impact? So one, I am hoping to impact bringing in a different perspective on the board. I'm a parent, and I'm also by training a specialist as well because of my background in early intervention, early childhood special education. I'm also someone who have had multiple experiences around disability, so I understand like some of the challenges as well as the opportunities when we start thinking about services offered to families. So my perspective, and of course, my own identity as a Black Caribbean woman who is a parent, and of course, as an immigrant. These are perspectives, lived experiences that I will add, if elected, to this board. I'm also hoping that the perspective around immigration is one that I am hoping would be an asset to the board, because I think especially for us as early childhood educators, we don't always realize some of the hurdles that families face in terms of that whole immigration process. So that is something that I bring. I also bring my own philosophy around participation. I believe that voice is extremely important and that we should be listening to families. I also know that families may not be comfortable coming to a board meeting to share their experiences. And so, what that means is that we need to hear those experiences through other means and also continue to work towards creating spaces where families can feel welcome. So, I think that that's very important. I bring my perspective also and experiences as someone who has worked in this field and who also value the specialists and other staff members who are working at the ESD. I bring my perspective around the importance of self-care and understanding that self-care is not only left up to the individual, but self-care, a huge component of it is community care. And so we need to create working environments that are caring, right? Environments that are caring so that people can indeed take care of themselves. So these are the ways in which I am hoping to impact the board. One, through collaborating and establishing a stronger board, working also with other stakeholders, and this includes the school districts and of course families make up those school districts. So working together with all of these different stakeholders as well. And as I mentioned, that whole idea around voice, the importance of bringing the community in and always making sure that we are aligned with what the community needs and what the community values as well. And the last aspect is just around self-care, particularly for staff, building that sense of community care so that our staff and our specialists can actually take care of themselves, because we know that when our staff feel supported, then they're better able to have the capacity to also support families and students and whoever else might be their clientele. All right, so I don't want to keep this going for too much longer, but please stay tuned, because I will be answering his third question. And his third question, which is such a thoughtful question, is around how do I hope to support marginalized communities? And he gave some examples of that as being essentially families of color and, of course, families who maybe parents themselves are disabled and or their children are disabled. All right, so see you soon. Stay tuned for more.